Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Sorry I didn't get around to posting last week. I was way back home for a wedding. And I didn't have time during the week to plan, write, and make a video for you. I am doing one this week, but again, I'm going to be taking an absence next weekend because my partner's coming down to visit me, so we'll be quite busy that weekend. But after that, I promise I will be doing my best to get back on a weekly video schedule. Today we are going to be covering some basic tips I have for people that are beginners in archaeology, specifically commercial archaeology. I've mentioned some of this stuff in some of my other videos, but some of it is new, and I wanted to just kind of like compile everything in one spot for you guys to look at. All of these tips are based upon my own personal experiences. My first tip for you today is that whenever you're leaving and going to work for a job that is going to be based outside, as archaeology often is, you need to check the weather and then pack your stuff accordingly. Whether you're going for just one day, a couple days, or a week, you need to make sure that you are prepared for the weather. This specifically I've run into problems with a couple times. My very first week working back home, I underdressed one day and ended up making myself sick with a cold because I wasn't warm enough when it was like absolutely freezing outside. I've also seen like several people when I've worked in quite hot conditions getting heat stroke and being dehydrated because they're not wearing the proper clothing and they're not drinking enough water. Or also alternatively, I did a walkover once where I just like got absolutely pelted with various forms of precipitation, and I did not have the like footwear appropriate for the situation, and I just suffered for like a week. So it's always key to try and make sure that if it's going to be really cold, you have enough warm stuff. If it's hot, then you're dressed appropriately for that, but still within dress code for your company, because you don't want to be scandalously dressed on a building site. Trust me, if you're a girl, it's just not a good idea. Or if it's going to be really wet, you want to make sure that you're having waterproofs with you, wellies or rain boots, and that are like steel-toed and all that stuff, and all the appropriate safety gear. The second tip I have for you is one that was passed on down to me by one of my now friends and former co-worker slash supervisor, and he told me to never stop asking questions, which is something that I found to be a really useful piece of advice, because I feel like especially nowadays, like I don't know if you've ever noticed in like classrooms or lectures or something, whenever they say, oh, anybody have any questions, nobody ever raises their hand anymore because everyone's too afraid to like look stupid or like they don't know what they're talking about. And you need to be able to get over that pride in order to like excel at this job, because nobody walks into it knowing everything, and the only way that you learn stuff is by asking questions, because if you don't, someone's just gonna automatically assume that you can do it. So I got asked a couple months ago to lay out a grid, and it has been a long ass time since I've done that. And I was just kind of said to the supervisor, like, I don't really remember how to do this properly. Like, how am I supposed to do that? And got him to explain to me how it's going to be done. Or just this week, someone had done something on site, and so I asked my supervisor why did they do that, and had him explain to me exactly the reasoning why something had been done or the way that it should be done. And I found as well that rather than people reacting negatively to you asking questions, they actually prefer if you are asking questions, because they would rather you ask a question and admit that you don't know how to do something, and thereby have the opportunity to do it correctly, rather than to be too afraid to ask a question and do something wrong and like have to go back, and for someone to have to go back and fix it. Third tip I have is to bring your own trowel, and this can also be applicable to other equipment, but generally you want to try and find a trowel that you like, that suits your purpose, before you go out to work, because if you are stuck with a company provided one, it's gonna be crap. It's just a general rule. They tend to buy them from like homeware stores, and they're just not very good quality. They're not going to last you very long. The fourth tip I have relates sort of in a way to the ask questions one, but it's just like don't be arrogant. I've seen so many people come onto sites who are like fresh out of university and field school and stuff like that, and maybe they even have like masters or PhDs, and they just come onto site and they just like, oh, I know what I'm doing. And generally, if you've never done commercial archaeology before, you don't know what you're doing. And it's going to be really obvious. And having an attitude that you are already, that you don't really need any instruction isn't going to help you out in terms of doing your work properly or to get along with your team, because just like assuming that you're better than everybody else, it's never going to make you any friends, so to speak. You also have to be careful about sharing your opinions, because if you are somebody that's straight out of field school or something, you know, you can be really enthusiastic about stuff, but if you are putting your opinions forward rather forcefully and say you think something should be done one way and they're not doing it that way, but you think that they should do it that way, like don't force the issue, because there's probably a reason that they're doing it that way. Maybe they haven't explained it to you and that's not right, but trying to tell people that they're doing something wrong when you've only just started doing it and they've been doing it for however long is, again, never going to win you any friends, and it could end up not going well for you in terms of getting an extension of a contract or something like that. Because what if you're telling a supervisor who's been working for however long that he's doing something incorrectly based upon your experience that's only been in the classroom or is based upon like a couple months of working, like, it's never going to go down well. I'm sorry, it doesn't matter how diplomatic you are about it. So be careful about what you say and always try and be polite. Next tip I have is that you should not stand around. This is something that can be applied to like any job, but you really have to get yourself in the habit of kind of constantly looking for something to do and not just being that person that's just standing around staring at everybody else while they're working. Again, it's going to tick off your coworkers and it's not going to look good to your supervisor. Always try and be helpful. Even if your supervisor isn't doing anything, try and say to them, is there anything that needs to be done? Can I check records? Can I do this? Can I do that? Because they'll appreciate you asking. The sixth tip I have is to always put yourself forward. It never benefits you to like stay in the background, so to speak, if you want to progress in this career. For example, when I went on field school for the first time and I happened to uncover a skeleton, we had our osteoarchaeologist and her personal students from her university come in and excavate it, and I was allowed to assist. And then, having discovered that I really liked that kind of stuff, I then spent time kind of, I guess you would say, brown nosing the osteoarchaeologist, saying, I find this really interesting, this is really cool, I'd love to know more about it, what classes could I take, could I do any stuff on your dig, because she had one that was slightly separate from us. And I just kind of constantly tried to remind her that I was interested and that I was really keen to do something with osteoarchaeology. Whereas I had a friend at the same time who had already taken some osteoarchaeology courses and was interested, but then just like expected this lady to know that she was interested and that she'd like to work with her and thereby ask her to do some stuff. And she got really upset when I was asked to come to this separate dig for a day to see what it was like, and she wasn't given the invitation as well. And it was just kind of like, well, that's because they didn't know that you were interested. You have to kind of make sure that you're putting yourself forward and that you have your own best interests in mind. As well, on this dig that I'm currently on, they've been saying that they're like going to be training us for a lot of stuff, and so we are allowed to sign up for training, and I've been essentially signed up to do everything, because everything that I get trained in is something that I can put on my CV, and it's something that makes me more valuable to the next company that I go to. So it's getting trained in something and putting myself forward has never backfired for me personally, and I doubt it will for anybody else. The seventh tip that I have is, again, pretty common knowledge, but pack enough food. This job burns a lot of calories on an average day, and you don't really want to be stuck hungry in the middle of nowhere with nothing to eat. Additionally, you want to make sure that you are packing yourself a meal or a lunch or whatever, snacks, that you can generally, the first day at least, doesn't need to be cooked because you don't know whether or not you're going to have the facilities of having a microwave, a kettle, or whatever you're going to need for your lunch. The law here in the UK is that you have to have 5 people or more in order to have a welfare. So if it's just you, a digger driver, and a banksman out in the middle of nowhere, you're not going to be getting a microwave to heat up your lunch. Additionally, when I worked back home in Canada for the winter, we had like over 40 people site, and we didn't even have a welfare at all. We had to eat our lunch inside of our work area. We had porta potties to use, and that was pretty much it. Thankfully, at the same time, we had some diesel heaters that were defrosting the ground for us with that had these funnels of hot air coming in. So a couple people, including myself, got a bit experimental and bought some like canned ravioli and stuff, or food that if you needed to heat it up, we would just put it in the funnels with the hot air coming out of it about an hour before lunch to heat everything up. But again, that might give me cancer. It's not necessarily the safest way to heat up your food. So you really need to make sure that you're keeping that in mind and that you're bringing enough food so that you're not going to spend your day hungry and grumpy. My 9th tip is that you should be always bringing, I guess, a civilian kind of either set of clothes or shoes with you. I myself had this happen to me my very first week that I worked in commercial archaeology, where I left the house all dressed for work. I had my work jacket, I had my work boots on, I had everything. And then at the end of the day, I had to go grocery shopping, and I didn't have normal shoes to change into. So my shoes at the end of the day were covered in mud, pretty chilly, they were wet, and I had to walk through this nice grocery store, leaving muddy boot prints behind me the whole way, and it was awful. And I had to do it for a whole week because I didn't have any other shoes. I could have bought some, but like, what's the point? Why would I buy myself shoes when I have some at home? So always kind of keep that in mind, that at the end of a particularly shitty weather day, you're not going to want to sit in your work clothes in a van or a car or whatever for your entire drive home / to whatever hotel you're staying at. Sorry, that was the 8th tip, and this is the 9th tip. Learn to write in block capital letters, in black ink preferably. Handwriting is the bane of any post-excavation person's life. People that just write in their own handwriting on stuff, that especially when said handwriting is illegible, it is a pain in the ass to try and decipher someone else's handwriting. And especially in archaeology, where everything tends to be handwritten and everything needs to be either transcribed or like read in order to put input into the report, you need to be able to read somebody's writing. So it will never go wrong for you if you can write in block capital, like print letters. And just getting into the habit. I've gotten into the habit so much that that's actually how I just now write in general rather than just at work. The last and 10th tip that I have for you today is the general site philosophy. This was a piece of advice that was given to me before I started my very first field school by a family friend who was an archaeologist that worked for the engineering corps in America, as well as working in the UK, and was now working as like a general consultant at Archaeologist. And what she said to me when I talked to her and asked for advice before I went away was, be the first person on site and the last person off site every day. And that's just a general tip about work ethic. You don't, like I said before, you don't want to be standing around, but you just always want to kind of have to do something. And being seen as one of the first people up the hill, on site, whatever, and then last off site every day will always leave a good impression of you to people, especially supervisors. And it will be something that sticks in their mind when they're considering people that they're going to ask back, people that they're going to give job to, etc., etc. So it's just a good piece of advice to just go by in general, and has shaped my own personal work ethic, and based on the fact that I've managed to have a career in archaeology, I would say it's been a pretty successful piece of advice. That's it. My 10 kind of tips for beginners in archaeology, just generic stuff and stuff that I don't think anybody really ever thinks about. As per usual, I hope this was helpful for you guys. Please leave me any thoughts that you have in the comments below. If you'd like to see more videos from me, please subscribe. You can also check out my social media, which I have a Twitter that I don't really ever post on besides to update about videos, and my Instagram, which I tend to try and post much more often than on my Twitter. I had a good streak going of going every day, but that's kind of died. But I do post a lot more regularly on there. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye!